Hi everyone, my name is Brandon. I've been in IT for just under 10 years. I created growthatbrain.com and vetmedcalculator.org, and I blog about systems administration stuff at newsysadmin.com. I really enjoy helping people, and I really enjoy learning new stuff, and I think having a home lab is one of the absolute best ways that you can learn new stuff for aspiring systems administrators. So today, hopefully I can help you set one up for yourself. Let's dive into it. So the first thing you'll want to do is have a machine that you can actually set the lab up on. Which for my machine, I have an i9 with 20 cores, 32 gigabytes of memory, a terabyte of MEME storage, and 400 gigabytes of SSD storage. You don't really need that much to have a solid lab. But the more cores you can have, and the more memory you can have, and the more storage you can have, the better, because you're going to have VMs on the lab. But for a basic lab, it's really not required to have all that I have in my home lab. Microsoft officially recommends for the lab kit that we're going to be using 300 gigabytes of available disk space, a high throughput disk subsystem, which just means fast read-write storage. So install state is fine. Up to 32 gigabytes of memory. Again, you probably don't need that much, but more is better. It's just more resources to use. A high-end processor, so more cores the better. The more cores you have, the more cores you can assign to virtual machines, the faster you can get things done on the virtual machines. And then a fully updated Windows Server 2019 OS is the recommendation, but we're going to use Windows 10 Pro, which is totally fine. So the first thing you'll want to do after you have a machine is you'll want to enable HyperV on that machine. And the way you do that, you can just search turn Windows, features on or off, find HyperV, click OK. And Hyper-V is what we use to control all of the virtual machines and manage them. So it requires a reboot. I'm going to reboot, and I'll be right back. Awesome. The reboot has completed, so now we're going to check out Hyper-V Manager. Hyper-V Manager. And we're going to want to create an external switch. The way that we do that is you click on Virtual Switch Manager. You can see that external is checked by default, and then just click Create Virtual Switch. And we're going to get super creative and just name ours External. And click OK. Click Yes. It'll take a second to complete. And then once we have our external switch, we can download the Windows 10 and Office 365 Deployment Lab Kit. Awesome. So let's go download the lab kit. I'll add a link to this in the description as well, but here is the website. We can just click continue. We're gonna add a bunch of nonsense because it doesn't actually check for this. And then it's gonna download the labs and guide zip. I'm gonna speed up the video, and I'll see you guys when the download's complete. Awesome, looks like it's downloaded, so we'll open that location. We're gonna extract it. Extract, so we'll take another 100 years to complete. Cool, we're back, and the extraction has completed. So we're gonna right click and hold Shift and select Run as Administrator on the setup.exe. You're going to get this prompt saying Windows protected your PC, most likely, and then just run anyway. You'll see this one as well. Click Yes. It'll open up the setup wizard. Click Next. Click Next again. It'll scan for that external virtual switch. It found it. It's ready to be provisioned. Click Next. And then this process will take, I don't know, a few minutes to complete, like the setup. And then the lab itself will take probably 15 to, I don't know, it really depends. I would just let it sit for like 30 minutes or so and come back. But cool, we'll let this begin, and we'll come back when the lab has finished completing. Cool, looks like the setup wizard has completed. I'm gonna open Hyper-V Manager, and it looks like it's still in the process of setting up the labs. You'll actually know when this part of the setup is complete, because when it is, only the DC1 and GW1 virtual machines will be running within your Hyper-V Manager. So we'll just let this sit for a while longer, and we'll come back in a bit. Sweet, and we're back, and it looks like just my DC and my gateway are running, so the setup is complete. We're gonna do a few things to make it a little bit more simple, because it's the first time lab for, I'm assuming, most of you. Just to go over some of the things that the lab includes by default. You get the Windows 10 Enterprise version 21H1. The client 7 is going to have Windows 7 Enterprise installed. CM1 is going to have Configuration Manager or Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager version 2103 installed. There's going to be Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit, the Windows Deployment Toolkit, Microsoft Application Virtualization, so AppV, Microsoft BitLocker Administration Monitoring, Windows Server, and Microsoft SQL Server. Lots of good stuff to play with and get familiar with and get good at. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn off both of these guys, the DC1 and the gateway. DC just stands for domain controller. And we're going to start some of these configurations. So we're going to start by right-clicking the DC, go to Settings. We're going to go to underneath this Hardware tab here. We're going to go to Memory. We're going to give it a little bit more memory, if you can spare. And then click Apply. And then we're going to look at Processor. For DC1, we don't really need to give it 2 processors. You can if you have a lot, but 1 is fine. So we'll change it to 1 and click Apply again. Always feel free to give it more down the road if you need. That looks good, so we'll start going to some of the other machines here. Let's switch to our Configuration Manager server, which is CM1. We're going to go to Memory, and we're going to use this, well, I'm going to use this one a lot, so I'm going to give it a lot more memory. But you might be using your lab for something else, so it's totally up to you. But if you're going to use Configuration Manager, give it as much memory as you can afford to. And I'm also going to give it some more processors. You want at least 2. I'm going to give it 4 because I have 20 to spare. And then we're going to go over, actually, yeah, this is pretty much all we need for the custom stuff. Cool. So we're going to set up a NAT. We're going to minimize this. You can close out of this. Back into Hyper-V. We're going to right-click Virtual Switch Manager. Sorry, left-click. We're going to find HYD-CorpNet 1. We're going to click Internal Network, and then we're going to save it by clicking Apply. Next, we're going to type in PowerShell. We're going to run the ISE as administrator. If you don't know what PowerShell is, that's okay. You just kind of need to copy and paste over these scripts. I'll attach a blog post I wrote around the same thing. but it's just 2 lines of code. So here's the first one. Press enter. Awesome. The first part is done for CorpNet. And then we're going to do the second part. Nice. So our NAT switch is ready to go. IP is good, and the switch is created. So basically, what we did is we made it so our host machine is going to perform NAT for HYD-CorpNet. So by default, all of our VMs will be pointing directly at it. So makes things a little bit easier. You don't really need to mess with the gateway anymore. It's all going to be right through your host machine. So also shout out to Amicasto for those 2 PowerShell lines. And then the last step is kind of just make sure that everything works. By default, you double click a machine and click start to begin the connection. And on every single one of your machines in the Office Lab kit, it's gonna give you the same default password, which is password with a capital P, the @ symbol, SSW0RD. So that's gonna be the password for everything by default. I'm gonna start a few of these here. And then basically what you want to do, so logging in with that same password, you'll just want to update everything right away. So check for updates. Click install now. It'll take a while for you to update everything, but you should definitely do that as the first action. And then you can make it so they can all see each other. It's just network sharing. Click yes. So all the computers on the same network, which is that CorpNet, will be able to see each other. It just makes it easier for testing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Make sure you update everything right away. Once everything's updated, what I'd recommend doing is taking a snapshot, or sorry, creating a checkpoint, which will create a snapshot. But basically all you need to do is right click, create checkpoint, and then if anything ever goes wrong and you cause issues with your virtual machine, you have a checkpoint where you can revert back to that particular time when everything was okay. So get everything in a good state, make sure everything's working, and everything is working, right click, checkpoint, and then if you ever need to revert back to that last checkpoint, you can click revert and it'll look like this. It'll create some automatic ones by default, but when I know that everything looks really good and it's working and there's no issues, that's usually when I manually do it myself. Pretty straightforward. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out, but have fun and do cool stuff. See you guys.